I do this in my personal life all the time. I'm the girl at the party, like talking about menstruation. Hello, lovely internet people. Welcome back to my channel, Nicole's Many Opinions. I'm Nicole, and I have a lot of opinions. And today we're actually not going to be talking about my opinions. We're going to be talking about something called endometriosis, which is a medical condition that if you've clicked on this video, you probably either already know someone with or you have yourself. I've been diagnosed with endometriosis for about 10 years. Obviously, I had it way before my diagnosis, and I have done a lot of things to try to manage this chronic condition, and so I thought that a video about this would be really helpful. So I want to start off this video saying that I am not a medical professional. I'm not a member of the medical community, and so all of the advice that I'm going to give you is just advice about what I do for my own body and what has proven useful through 10 years or more of trial and error, right? And at this point, I should knock on wood, but my endometriosis is manageable, and I haven't had a really bad flare-up in quite a few years. And so given how painful this is and how much we are all just struggling for like information about it, I felt like I should share this. And I will say I'm a little nervous about this video because I feel really strongly about this topic. Like I'm one of the women who, like, if you are on a public bus and somebody is like, oh, I got bad cramps, like I will turn around in my seat and be like, so did you know, right? I do this in my personal life all the time. I'm the girl at the party, like talking about menstruation. So the first thing I want to say doesn't actually have to do with like anything you're doing, but about your interactions with the medical community. So, if you are privileged enough and fortunate enough to be able to see a medical practitioner about your endometriosis, and I have been in positions in my life where I have been and I haven't been like able to afford that, I think that there are some things that you should keep in mind whenever talking to a doctor about this, and that is mainly that you know your body. So don't let someone else tell you about your body. Right? Clearly, doctors have had an incredible amount of education, and so they know about the human body, and we should listen to them about what they know about the human body, right? And obviously, we believe in science here. But also, I think part of medical training is that doctors are trained like they are gods, right? That they are infallible and they are gods. And like part of the reason that they are trained like that is because so much weight rests on their shoulders, and so much could happen if they are not confident in their decision making. But I have found that when talking to me about my own body and my experiences with my body, that occasionally comes off like they know about me and my uterus better than I know about me and my uterus. And so stand firm in your voice, like know what you're talking about with your body, and like hold that when you're talking to doctors. Make them listen to you. And if your doctor is not listening to you, find a new doctor. If your doctor tells you that your level of pain is normal, find a new doctor. You want someone who trusts you and your judgment, who listens to you, and who trusts in your pain, who believes that you are in pain, because endometriosis is so painful, and it is not normal. And then from there, right, from that foundation, you can begin a journey together about how to manage it and make decisions on your own. And so that would be the first thing for like everybody. I think that's incredibly important. So first let's talk about a little bit about what is endometriosis. If you clicked on this video, you probably already know, but just like a little brief one. So endometriosis, it's a chronic condition. The lining of your uterus grows outside of the places that it should grow. So it could grow on your fallopian tubes, it could grow on your uterine walls, but it can also grow on like the surrounding organs. And that causes an incredible amount of pain, right? So you have growths in your body that should not be there, connecting to places that they should not be. Also, endometriosis growths can have their own nerve endings, which makes them incredibly painful. They can have their own blood supply, which can make them really big. And then sometimes they pop, and that is excruciating, hospitalized level pain when that happens. So that's basically what it is. There is no cure for it. There are management techniques, some of which have worked for me, some of which have not, some of which are recommended and sanctioned by the medical community, and some of which there is no research about, right? So when you begin this journey with yourself, just know that like this isn't going to be a we do all the things and tomorrow we are better. It doesn't work like that. But you can get to a place where the disease is managed. And I am there now, so I can tell you that I understand your pain, I understand how bad this is, and there is a way to get to a place where you can live your life like a normal human. Let's just get into the tips. The first one is tracking. Now, this one doesn't actually help with pain management in any way, but I find that if you're gonna start assessing your body, you need to have a baseline from which to assess, right? So you should track your period. I use an app called Clue, but there are a ton of apps. And so what I like to track, what I think is important to track, is I track the days of my bleeding. Obviously, that's like a normal one. Everyone does that. But I also track what days I have pain, what the pain level is, and then if I have other symptoms. So like tender breasts, headache, some PMS symptoms, exhaustion. I suffer from fatigue, right? And so I track those throughout the month, and that gives me some like useful information, because then when you start implementing the other strategies, you can see 2 or 3 months, you can see the pattern, like, okay, is this useful and is this helping? Or are my symptoms the same that they have been? And a thing that I do right this far in is if I have like breakthrough bleeding, so if I bleed while I'm ovulating, for me, that normally means that I'm going to have some more severe symptoms come my period. And so that's really useful for me to know, right? I also know that I am super regular, which a lot of women with endometriosis are not regular. And so that helps me. If I'm continuing to be really regular, I'm like, okay, we're in a good place. If I break and I'm not regular anymore, which has happened, I have to assess, like, okay, am I more stressed? Because stress will lead to pain. Have I done something with my routine that has caused my period to shift? Because if it has, I need to assess that. So I just use it as a way to like keep in tune with me and my body. And so that would be my first suggestion. Start tracking your period and all your symptoms. Okay, then what you want to do after you have a good baseline is to try to limit the amount of inflammation in your body. And so you can do this in a few ways. One of the ways that I have found most useful is through my dietary choices. So the first one is limiting my alcohol intake. I have been guilty of when I was younger. I would like try to self-medicate with wine, which like I feel it. You just want to be unconscious, I know, but alcohol increases inflammation in the body, and increased inflammation causes more pain. So I no longer drink on like the 3 or 4 days before my period, and then for my entire period. So again, this is when tracking becomes important. I'm like not gonna live the life where I never drink. That's just not realistic for me. But 3 or 4 days before my period, I stop drinking. And then I don't drink for the entire time during my period. And that has helped so much. One of my friends also just started doing this after years of me telling her, and she was like, after 2 months, she was like, my pain is so much less. And I was like, dude, I know, so much less. You don't think that that's going to make a big difference. It does. So limit your alcohol intake before and around your period. The next one is caffeine. This one's probably the hardest one for me. I love coffee. I love coffee so deeply, but I do the same thing. So I don't drink coffee. This one I do like 2 days before my period, and then through the beginning like 3 or 4 days of my period, so my heaviest bleed days. I bleed about really heavy, about 4 days, and then I have light bleeding for about 3 or 4 days. So I have a 7 to 8 day period. Yay me. So I limit caffeine intake about 2 days before my period starts, and then for the first 3 or 4 days, my heavy bleed days during my period. And if I drink caffeine after my heavy bleed days, when I'm still light bleeding, I'm making a conscious choice there, because what you will find, what I have found actually, is that it will kick my bleeding back up. So if I go into low bleeding and then I have a coffee, my bleeding gets heavier. And even if I'm at low pain, my pain will get more. So caffeine does cause a little bit of inflammation in the body, but also caffeine is a stimulant, right? And so if my muscles are contracting and I add a stimulant to that contraction, we're asking for pain. So this one really hurts me because I also suffer from fatigue during my period. So I sleep for like 13 or 14 hours. And so sleeping for 13 or 14 hours and then waking up and not having coffee is the worst. Coffee for me is nostalgic and comforting. And so I have to like not do those things either. This is the worst one for me, but it's worth it. Like that pain is just not worth anything. So limit alcohol, limit caffeine. Number 3. So this one, I think comes in a few iterations. If you have watched a lot of videos like this or read a lot of blogs, I don't consume dairy. So I actually don't consume any animal products, but before I was not consuming any animal products, I specifically cut dairy because it made a big difference to my pain levels. And I don't know that there's a lot of research saying why, like we can make conjecture, but for me, dairy made a huge difference. And so I cut dairy. I tracked that for 3 or 4 months. It made a significant decrease in my pain levels, and so dairy was gone. Other people have recommended cutting gluten and then cutting high FODMAP foods. So like garlic, onions, right? There's a list of FODMAP foods, cutting those as well. I did try both of those. So at one point I cut gluten for 2 or 3 months. I tracked that. There was no noticeable difference in my pain levels. So I eat gluten because I love it. And it doesn't affect my body, but it might affect yours. So if you want to try this, cut it for 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months, track it, see if it decreases your pain. If it does, then you make the choice. Is that worth it for you or not? If it doesn't, add it back into your diet. FODMAP foods, same thing. They cause bloating, and so if one of your symptoms is severe bloat, which can be endobloat, can be a thing for a lot of women. I have endobloat, but like it doesn't bother me that much. I'm already a plus size lady, and I don't find bloating painful. So we just a little chubbier, and like that's okay. But if endobloat is a problem for you, maybe cutting FODMAP foods would help with that. Again, cut them, track it, see how you feel about it, if it's making a difference to your symptoms. If not, don't do that, because we don't need to add things that are unnecessary. But if it is, then there we go, right? And you know that around your period, and then you can start to play with the time periods. Cut it before your period, cut it during your period, cut it for the whole time. And it takes a little bit of finesse to figure all of that out. So for me, it's just dairy. But in a lot of blogs, dairy is mentioned, gluten is mentioned, and FODMAP foods are mentioned. I feel like this video is kind of all over the place. I'm saying a lot of things at you guys, but we're just gonna keep going. Okay, so we want to decrease inflammation in the body. We also want to decrease cortisol levels in the body and like the stress hormone, because that will also help. And so I do this in 2 ways. The first way is that I meditate every day. I meditate for 5 minutes, so it's really not that long. I do it on my coffee break. So right after I teach a class, I go get a coffee, I meditate for 5 minutes with that coffee, and then I go about my day. And so it's the same place in my schedule every day. And then sometimes I have more time to meditate for longer later, but even that 5 minutes makes a massive difference. I use an app called Calm, which I get for free because I'm a teacher, but there are plenty of like guided meditations on YouTube for free, so you don't have to pay for this at all. I think it makes a big difference. If you find like sitting and meditation really hard, some people it doesn't work for. One of my friends does breath work instead, so she does 5 minutes of breath work, which is like more active. And then I know a lot of my friends do yoga. So really you're just looking for something to like calm your mind, calm your body, decrease your cortisol levels. I do this every day because I find other benefits in it as well, but I would suggest that you start specifically just for the uterine pain. The other thing I do is light exercise. So I find that heavy exercise, like I enjoy lifting. I had a running phase for a while where I enjoyed running. Those things do not work for me right before my period. And if I do them on the first day or two of bleeding, heavy exercise increases my cortisol, because that's what heavy exercise does. But also I have a lot more bleeding. I'll have breakthrough bleeding. So heavy exercise around my period, I just don't engage in. But you do want to move your body. So light exercise. Go for walks. Do really light yoga. Sometimes I'll go swimming before my period. Just really light, move your body. Sometimes I'll dance, do some light dancing. That's probably my favorite. And then on my period, I try to do light exercise. This doesn't always happen for me. Sometimes I just need to sleep or lay, and that's fine if that's what your body tells you to do. But I do notice a difference if I manage to go for a walk. Try that. Okay, then increasing your omega-3s. I take a B vitamin. Check with your doctor before you take any supplements. Also look up the validity of those supplements, about what's in them. You want everything that you take to be third-party tested. But I take a B vitamin. And then the way that I increase my omega-3 fatty acids is that I have a tablespoon of flax seeds every day in my oatmeal. And that, I think, is the cheapest way. Flax seeds are really cheap, pretty much everywhere. You can just buy them by the bag. And then I grind them in my spice grinder. You want to grind up flax seeds so that they're more bioavailable to you. I grind them in my spice grinder. I keep a jar in my desk at work. I also keep a jar of ground up in my house. And then I just add a tablespoon to my oatmeal in the morning, and I take my B vitamin at the same time. You can get omega-3 fatty acids in other ways. The reason that you want to do this is because the combination of vitamin B and omega-3 fatty acids increases in your body something called PGE2. And PGE2, higher levels of that in your body leads to decreased pain. And there are a couple of studies that do say that. And so I've actually found this to be really helpful, including that. There are a lot of other supplements that you can take, and I take some of those as well. But I would say that overall, the cost-benefit ratio of all the things I take, flax seeds are sort of the least expensive and also the most impactful of the things that I consume. So that's what I would recommend. And then the last one would be just to educate yourself as much as possible. So I find that going into doctor's appointments with the most information has been useful. The book that I would recommend starting with is called The Period Repair Manual, and I'll put a picture of it here. I found that to be transformative about so many things, and I think it should probably be required reading for everyone with a uterus. But so I started there, and then I have a list of other books I've read, but if you're just looking for a starting place, Period Repair Manual is what you should read. And then you can go into some doctor's appointments with some knowledge, right? Well, no, I don't want to do that because this and this, or what about this, and have a conversation. And again, if your medical professional is not willing to have a conversation with you about it, then you need to find a new one. But yeah, educating yourself, both in research that is out there in the world and available, and books that are out there in the world and available, but also about all the things we've talked about in this video. What works for you and what does not work for you and your body, and testing those things out. And hopefully the more information we share with each other, the healthier we can all be, right? And the less pain we can all be in. So those are my sort of free tips for how to manage your endometriosis pain. I hope that they were helpful. If they were, give me a thumbs up. If you have any other things that you found incredibly helpful for yourself, please leave them below so that we can all have a conversation with each other. I'm always looking for new things to try and see how useful they are. So otherwise, have a great day, guys. Bye.